Hi, welcome to the Agent Odyssey podcast. I'm Matt Wyman, CEO and co-founder of Acario. We're an agent simulation company that helps you map and stabilize agent behaviors before they become risks for your business. Today, I have Andrew Levy, CEO and co-founder of AirCover AI, joining us. Andrew, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Awesome to have you here. Why don't we start off by having you tell us a little bit about AirCover AI?
Yeah, so AirCover has been around for 4+ years, but I'll start with the origin story so you get some background. Uh, in 2017, I sold my previous company to VMware. We were in the analytics space. We're on 1 billion devices worldwide. We came in ready to leverage the VMware channel to scale significantly, but I had to train device management and data center sellers on how to sell analytics. And it was very difficult. And the thought was, well, what if you could embed the entirety of your company's domain expertise, knowledge base into every conversation, and then have much better data on what was working, what wasn't working, why were you winning or why were you losing, which at the time and even largely today, a lot of companies will just rely on tracking keywords as they come up in calls or looking at recordings. But you really want to understand why you're winning or losing. So we needed much better data. And I wanted the ability to really inject everything about our products and services in, before, during, and after every call. So that's how AirCover got started. And what we provide today is exactly that. It's a platform to deploy AI agents into live conversations.
Hmm.
And as a part of that, you can think of it like we're virtualizing the best parts of your company. So imagine your sales rep, when they join a call, along with them, they can bring an army of these AI agents, like your best pricing specialists, your best competitive intelligence specialists, and deliver the right information at the right time. And also, before and after the call, assist them in whether it's preparing for it or giving you and the company much better data on, what coaching areas you should focus on, what are the hot spots. And that's essentially what we built. And we're operating at a pretty large scale, work with many publicly traded companies, uh, mid-market companies, really across a variety of industries.
And if I'm not mistaken, uh, there's an announcement you just made. I think it was yesterday. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what this new thing that just happened.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. It's a very interesting topic that we can dive into. So we announced a virtual sales engineer. So, along that theme of how to virtualize the best parts of your organization, this one in particular, there's a lot to unpack because, historically sales engineers have been just hard to find the talent and hire for.
Yeah.
Uh, Companies not only do they struggle to hire for those roles, but they can't afford to have kind of one sales engineer to one account executive. So you end up with these ratios of, call it, one sales engineer for every 6 or 7 reps that are selling. And even then, it can be, some companies will have actually no sales engineers depending on your role. Like if you're selling to maybe SMBs or mid market, you may not even be assigned an SE. It may only go to the enterprise team. And so what our customers have really been asking us for is, we've been great at surfacing information historically on helping them with their pitch, their messaging, with positioning, with, like if an objection comes up or a competitor, or, AirCover can do things like surface a case study if we hear a pain point. But really deep technical knowledge is kind of a different beast
Yeah.
altogether. And being able to find the needle in the haystack in real time as you're speaking. So an example might be, a sales rep might hear, oh, do you support certification XYZ in Australia? Or, how much memory does your software take in your German data center? They likely are probably, pinging their colleagues on the side, trying to figure this out, maybe have to schedule a follow-up meeting. And by the way, everything I've just described was a problem before the current AI wave. Now you
Yeah.
apply the velocity, the product velocity that engineering has, and it's 10, 100 times worse because
Yeah.
the rate of products that are being released is picked up so much that, that actually the analogy is, the engineering teams have AI code reviewers now because humans can't scale to keep up with the pace that they're releasing code. What is that analogy? What is that solution for the sales team? Right. And that's actually what this virtual sales engineer represents. It gives companies the ability to scale to keep up pace with the engine with their products and services being released. And it's a way to fill gaps that they couldn't fill previously.
I think we're also starting to see products that are much more tuned to specific situations and specific customers, which means that the world map of possible features is even that much bigger, and to your point, it's being added to even more rapidly. So being in that situation, trying to answer those questions in real time, you need that input. But I think this is fascinating because you're also on the trajectory of the digital employee. And so I wonder if you could maybe talk a bit about how you're thinking about the difference between a tooling that's driven by AI and smart and knows the right moment to sort of step in or give you some additional information as an assistant versus the sort of, I'll put it in quotes, digital employee that starts to pick up some of that work and just do it themselves and do it itself.
Yeah. Yeah. The digital employee, or I think Gartner calls it tech teammate, or something along those
Right.
lines, is
We're gonna have 100 other names
it.
for this before we're
Yes.
done.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I think there's the other side of that coin is a lot of people talking about, okay, is this going to lead to job loss? What's happening there? And this one is interesting in particular because you couldn't you couldn't fill these roles to begin with, so it's really a way to
Yeah.
actually scale the existing organization. It's um, if that take that ratio I mentioned, it was 1 to 6 or 1 to 7. Now it's 1 to 1. Those are We're not replacing people in that instance. We're actually helping your organization scale more effectively and keep up with the pace of change, which presumably will help the companies sell more products and services, which will then lead to more hiring. So, if anything, it's a net positive in terms of job creation. Now, obviously, the types of jobs will change, the types of companies will change. uh, the products that are being released are obviously changing and different, but I think overall it's a net positive in that direction. And now for the employees themselves, they obviously need to adapt as well. To work with these digital
Yeah.
employees, tech teammates, and to learn what that means. And I think actually my co-founder. So I have two co-founders. One of them's my brother, and the other is we've I've worked with previously in my last startup, both of them. He's our CTO, and then my brother's our CBO. He actually has a great analogy along these lines, which is when GPS first came out, right? So
Hmm.
you had uh, people that are used to looking at maps, and then you kind of went to MapQuest, and you printed the map, and
I
then
remember
eventually
that.
you have the GPS on your, on the screen on the car or on your phone, and I think there was this worry, okay, can I drive while this thing is running? Is it going to distract me
Mm.
now? And now it's second nature, right? Like
Yeah.
you drive, it's there, it's assisting you. You have this digital teammate in your car telling you which way to go, right? Now it's not yet ordering food for you when you get to your destination or proactively doing these kind of things, but that's obviously there's additional capabilities being added, and it now it's just second nature, right? So I think there's something there with having these digital teammates, whether they're on your desktop, on the web, they're executing, they're doing jobs or work for you on your behalf, and you will have to, there'll be an adjustment period, but after time, I mean, it's not gonna, we're gonna
You're not
sound
thinking twice about it.
funny. We're gonna sound funny to the new generation who's gonna come in and say, "What are you talking about? This is just how you work."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's actually a good analogy in addition, because um, we've become so accustomed to using those maps that we will happily just follow it without even necessarily looking at the environment. And all sorts of examples of people who've, turned into dead ends that were obviously dead ends, but the map didn't know it was a dead end, and they just
Yep.
do it. And then the reverse too, which is, on long trips, there have been times where the map says, get off here, you're going to save 20 minutes. And sure enough, you do. You save 20 minutes, but you would never have known that. So that trust has really come way up. And I think we've learned to trust those maps. And I'm curious, as you're thinking about your motion, your product motion with these, these tech assistants or digital employees or whatnot, as you're trying to communicate what they can do and you're working with trust on the buyer side and trying to help people understand what's possible, how do you introduce them to these concepts so they can start to experience it and trust these agents that you're promoting?
Yeah, it's a balance between, and I think this has actually been true even before the current AI wave. Companies always need to decide, um, how opinionated you are in terms of how things
Mm.
will work, and then how customizable they are. Um, and I think it's one of the things directionally that we're trying to achieve, and I don't think anyone is there yet, is really trying to make sure that these, and this is actually where I think things differ from thinking of a digital employee as someone you've just hired off the street versus an extension of yourself. So,
Hmm.
I think that virtual SC, you may not have all that knowledge that SE has, but that SE can communicate back to you in your voice, can be personalized to how you like to work. So it doesn't need to be generic for the organization. It can be personal for the end user. Now, I say I don't think the industry is there yet, because I think that is the goal, is that eventually, instead of, one large foundation model that we all interact with, you have thousands and thousands of small language models that are, fine tuned to and understand you and the way you like to work and what makes you successful. So that is, I think that's the North Star for most companies. But to get there, there's always the crawl, walk, run, and there's ways that you
Yeah.
can deliver that type of experience. And then from a trust perspective, you start to think about things that actually have gotten to be less of a concern over time as the models themselves become better. Hallucinations and instruction following, and making sure that you're operating off of your data, and it's siloed, and so that you're not training anything up from other sensitive data, right? So I think all those boxes now can be checked pretty easily. But the North Star I mentioned, there's still a lot of work that the industry needs to go through.
I think it's fascinating in the automotive world. Mechanics who work at dealerships bring their own tools. They're actually responsible for buying and owning their own tools, even though they're working under the banner of the dealership. When an engineer starts at a company, they're often asked what kind of laptop they want to use, what kind of operating system they want to use. Nobody asks me what kind of pencil or what kind of pen I like to write with, right? I
Yeah.
just bring my tools with me. But then it makes this interesting world, like, this trust question. Is it the salesperson who has built this relationship with a virtual SE that they trust, knows how to speak in their voice, and then they bring that, somehow they bring a part or all of that with them? Or is it the organization? Now, I think right now we're all biased to say, well, it's the enterprise that provides. But what do you think? Do you think there's a future where people start to bring some of these assistants with them, and then the enterprise says, well, you have to have a solution for these these sort of gap situations? Do it yourself, bring an assistant, but you have to have the skill set. How do you think that might
Yeah.
play out?
Yeah. I think if a company can nail that, it's essentially why LinkedIn's been successful. They've been able to cross that boundary from consumer,
Mm-hmm.
individual, to bring it to the enterprise. But I haven't. You actually don't see a lot of examples of that. It's been, uh, companies are very much worried about their, you know, keeping their data private, keeping their customers in their own internal uh, CRM, type information, very private. And so, if for a model like that to work, you would really need a company that has built trust within the broader ecosystem, that they are able to silo out the and separate the what is the company specific information from the rest of that, you know, uh,
The part that makes it
let
personal.
yes, the part that makes it personal. And so, there's you can, of course, like, I mean, the what a lot of companies today are, they have RAG type systems where, you're
Sure.
doing, you're just looking up this information um, from a vector data store, and bringing it in. But um, yeah, that will also change over time. And with that, with those thousands of more personalized trained models. So yeah, it's possible. I just think it's likely to remain enterprise driven for a long
Too many
time.
barriers for now.
And there's too many barriers. And frankly, if you can very quickly get those digital teammates up to speed with how you work, then you may not need to do that. It depends on what that
That makes
ramp
sense.
time looks like. So yeah, that's what I think of that.
It's interesting because I think it also potentially changes that dynamic of who the buyer is, because it shifts it back to being the CRO or the person who's actually trying to organize, you know, um, their sales ops and how they want that to perform. Saying, okay, we like this virtual SE because this virtual SE speaks in the brand voice, speaks with, understands our systems and how our systems work. So I don't think we have the answers, but I'm interested in that interplay of the human and these virtual assistants and how they start to work together.
Yeah.
Do
Well, I
you?
think I think even the basics today aren't covered, which is, how do I keep up with
Yeah,
that rate of change, that pace of change? And so, even just giving you the answer of, like, okay, how much memory does your data center, or your software consume in this data center? And you're like, just even feeding that answer is leaps and bounds above what,
beyond.
beyond what they have access to today. And then certainly, um, you can actually get some of the way there with, personalizing email follow-up and injecting that technical information as an example for after the meeting. So I think just covering those basics today will have a big impact, and then making it more personal in the future to what makes you successful, combining that with, the to your point, from the CRO and down perspective of, what are they trying to achieve, how are they trying to coach, and what is the process that they're trying to get their team to follow. You need to inject all of that into those digital employees to help the humans.
I'm It makes a lot of sense. And there's just so much. Well, I hate to call it low hanging fruit because it's never, that implies it's easy. It's never actually easy, but there's a lot of opportunity in front of us. I'm curious how you treat the pilots. Like, the concepts are clear. The I think, myself included, like, I would believe that this is possible, that this would work. How do you help people experience it and experience it with their own data? I'd
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is something that we're seeing play out. It's happened over in previous, new technology waves, where you have the SMB and mid market companies moving very quickly, ready to know they need it to compete. They need to move quickly, and they need to give themselves an edge, and try new tools. And then on the enterprise side, some enterprises are more forward thinking than others, and sometimes in surprising areas. Like, for example, one of our customers is one of the top three credit agencies in the US, right?
Hmm.
You wouldn't expect them to move quickly. But then, we have another customer that is launching with us soon, that, it took a few years to get there. And, I think we're going to make them very successful, but it was a journey. And then there's another company. I don't want to name names here, but another company in finance that we know they're doing something like 20 concurrent pilots. They're kind of seeing
Yeah.
how things evolve, taking their time. And there's always that hesitation of, from the enterprise's perspective, okay, well, I don't want to make the wrong decision. And then you get into this
Right.
analysis paralysis where they don't make any decision, right? And
Yep.
that's worse than 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 just trying to pivot quickly. So um going back to your original question on pilots, we try we do all the things that every company should do, which is build the case up front of, what
Sure.
pain do you have, what are you trying to achieve. Now, it can be tough because in sales, you're unless you're a few call close type company, your sales cycles can be beyond the length of a pilot. So we at least try to show that, okay, we are matching that success criteria. Is it, that, okay, previously your reps couldn't answer whatever it was, 4 out of every 10 questions in the call, and now we can move that to close to 10 out of every 10. Great. We know that's going to have a great impact. We track your scores, your coaching scores. We've seen that go up into the right over time. It really depends on what they're struggling with, right? Like some companies want to improve their discovery and the amount of questions that they're asking prospects. Some companies want to paint more ROI and do better value selling, and others, they, they're rolling out a new methodology. And the question is, how do I train everyone on that? And well, they know that they can train them, but then how do you sustain it after that? Because there's some
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
stat like, 80% of that's forgotten after a month or two. So it's this continuous feedback, continuous coaching. And in a pilot, you really have to try to craft those success metrics up front, but also make everyone sure that we're all just remind everyone, hey, we're doing this within 2 weeks or 30 days. So, you know, here's what you should expect. And in some people, some companies that we work with are blown away immediately. They see the value. Others, they start to see improvements, and it's, well, you can't run a pilot for a year. We see the chart going up, and so you have to, in some sense, you just have to trust that it will keep
You have
going
to
up.
extrapolate at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's and again, it goes back to the stage of the company and the maturity level and all those things. One thing that we've seen that can hold up deals that every AI company has run into is now you have AI committees within
Hmm.
organizations, and so it's added, the n number of stakeholders, to the process, and that can always slow things down. So that's every AI company needs to have that as part of their own discovery of, okay, who who needs to sign off on this, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just that's on top of normal security and privacy teams, right? These are, additional questionnaires, additional new titles that have emerged, like, head of AI strategy, right?
Right.
Where
Right.
they need to be involved. And really, at the end of the day, there's really only one or two questions they care about. They just want to make sure you're not training their data to improve a competitor's, experience. Like, as long as you're siloing that, then, you should be fine.
It's interesting as an AI native. Well, we're both in AI native companies. th- There's a portion of this process that feels not all that different, not easier. It's not about easy, but not all that different than a SaaS software product would be in terms of figure out you got to model the internals of the organization you're selling to, of what they care about, their outcomes, their process, the time periods, all that. But I think there are also some nuances, and you just highlighted one of the critical ones. There are some nuances with selling a product that is fundamentally Gen AI based or AI based, because people interpret it differently, they receive it differently, they interact with it differently, the expectations are different. So, like the committee definitely is one of them. Um, I think it's fascinating that you're seeing that already. Uh, I'm curious if you're also, what about education? What about expectations on the other side in terms of pace of change or, sort of the magic capabilities? Are you seeing some nuances there that are different than what you would have seen in your prior company when you were selling in a more SaaS model?
Yeah. I think what I'm about to say, you could argue, is you would see in the previous world, but I think
I think that's
change
okay. I mean,
man,
it's fine to say
yeah,
like, yeah,
I think change management, it's always been there, but with AI, you I actually think you need to encourage them to, just steal the Steve Jobs think different line, but you need. I'll give you an example. You We were in an RFP recently where um, they were evaluating conversational intelligence, and the legacy way to think about it is, okay, we want to equip our managers with a better data to coach their team, right?
reasonable.
That's reasonable, um, which we do, by the way. But there's there's a different way to be thinking about that, which is, what if you, in addition to empowering those managers, what if you could provide continuous real-time coaching feedback back to the reps, right? So you're trying to solve, which doesn't solve that original problem I mentioned, right? It's just a different way to think about it. It's, well, now that we do have this ability to extract very detailed coaching information both as it's happening and then immediately after, why not, in between those one-on-ones you have with your manager, those deal reviews, why not provide that continuous feedback and push that information directly to the reps so that they can improve and get better? It's like maybe and I didn't share this at the time, but now I'm thinking about it, maybe I should have. Like, the analogy being, if you're an athlete, you're gonna go to practice. You're not just gonna listen to the coach at games, right? You're gonna continuously try to improve yourself. So, um, it's a different way of thinking. It's part of the new unlocks that you have with AI. And so sometimes
Yeah.
the historical requirements don't actually match the capabilities of what you can do today, which arguably are a better approach. So
Yeah.
you then need to reframe the conversation and convince your buyer
And
otherwise.
rethink it. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I also really like your point that change management has always been a topic, but in many cases it was a good idea. Now it's just mandatory. You can't avoid it. You can't ignore it. You will you will find that you need to think differently about things. You will find that if you don't, you'll get friction. It doesn't work. So it all fits together. I think that's amazing. I'm I'm curious. I always ask people about sort of like the human skill. So maybe this sort of leads right into that. So what kind of human skills do you feel that people need to develop and work on to sort of be ready for this whole world of digital employees and Gen AI that's coming throughout our lives and all these assistants?
Yeah. Yeah. It's we could have spent the whole episode talking about the whole podcast,
We really could
but
have.
yeah. I guess just to jump around a few areas. I was talking to my wife. She's a Paramount engineering manager, and she was mentioning an employee. I'm not going to name the employee. Told her, "Oh, I don't feel, I'm not too into using AI yet," or something like that. And, that
Okay.
that's fine, but I think that's very much. I mean, it's stating the obvious, but you need to adapt, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a reason you have CEOs coming out and saying, if you're not using AI every single day in your job, then something is wrong, right? And it is a force multiplier, no matter your role, whether you're an engineering manager or you work in human resources, like whatever your role is. Um, Now, the next obvious question is, especially for those people that haven't yet adapted, is, okay, well, how do you get started, and what do um, how do you work in this new world? And I think that there are analogies with what works on the engineering side. And just to give you an example, there's a reason that companies are, and actually junior engineers are struggling to get jobs right now because this is a reason that companies are looking for mid-level senior engineers to work in conjunction with AI. And the reason for that is, it works best when you have a well-designed example and you say, "Hey,
Yeah.
I don't know, to use the car analogy, maybe, like, I've designed this, like, really amazing you know trunk. Now, can you take that design and but I want to design the front of the car now. So, can you work in some of the same methodologies, the same structure, like whatever it might be? And so, versus saying, oh, just design me a car. Like it
Yep.
helps to really give the blueprints for success. And it doesn't have to be, obviously, you're not going to build the entire car and say, now build me another car. You just need to find the components that really demonstrate what you're trying to achieve. And the same is true for every role in an organization, right? So if you're in marketing,
Well, it's knowing what
you know,
matters, right? You're
yeah,
describing a person who can provide guidance about what are those few critical elements that need to be mentioned in order to get a good response. Unless you have at least some amount of background to call those out, you're a bit of at a disadvantage. But on the other hand, the pace increase is significant if you do. So hence the mid-level that you're calling out.
well, and yeah, and you may not be able to create. And this is really the struggle with a lot of new grads today is, and not just engineering, is if what I said is true, someone has to give you a chance to get to that point of being able to design systems well, to leverage AI to build more well-designed systems. So, that is a real problem that needs to be solved. And not to say no college hiring is happening; it is happening. It's just at a maybe a lower pace because you have that need being filled with that, like an example would be lawyers can use uh, tools on the market now that act as a and help me out. What's the phrase in the legal profession? A junior
Paralegal?
basic paralegal. Thank you. Yes. So you now, does it eliminate the need for all paralegals? Probably not, but certainly, like, it goes back to that analogy of, well, did you previously hire one-to-one in the past? Probably not. So it's at least filling that, right? So but it is making it harder. So you in some sense you need to self train and be able to understand, learn how these both the tools work. You need to get experience just building and getting started. Again, whether you're in marketing, sales, whether you're in engineering, and you need to really demonstrate that you can scale yourself. And the best way to learn is just by doing it. So going back to that example of an employee who said, "Oh, I'm not really into it," you need the best way is to just get started, and then you'll
You got to just
quickly
do it.
figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I also I love the fact that you're pointing at the learning, because I think that, and possibly this is just me being optimistic. I have two kids who are both right in that age range, but we learn constantly, and so if you're working with a digital employee, if you're working with an agent, you will learn from the agent just as much as you're starting to inform, and you'll go back and forth and build a new relationship. And I realize this is dating myself a bit, but way back at the beginning of my career, I remember a conversation with an extremely accomplished computer scientist when they were poking fun at all these, at Java and all these languages and the abstractions. They're like, oh, these abstractions are ridiculous. You don't really have your hands in the thick of it. But we learned to build software differently because of those abstractions. And people now will learn to do their, not just engineering, but whatever it is they're doing in the world, they'll learn to do it differently because they have the assistance, which may actually, I mean, my optimism is that it will turn to an advantage at some point, but it's definitely a problem with bootstrapping. Like this moment in time is not benefiting that, because they don't, those agents don't exist yet fully. Like, you're starting to build them. People are trying to build them and get them out in the world. But I have to assume a person who's working with your virtual SC will start to learn about the memory requirements in Germany because they'll see that come up. They'll start to learn about how that system's being used because they'll see it come up. And then that'll create some sort of reinforcement there back and forth that
Yeah. Yeah,
intertwines the
it's
two.
that old adage, you need to hear something 7 times to fully internalize it, right? Now, of course, once you internalize it, you have your product team that's released, 10 new products, right? So you gotta keep up.
You're only going to
So
get 3 at that one.
right. Exactly.
The next question comes in the one after that. Andrew, it's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.